Welcome to Prompt India podcast. I am Saran.
And I am Karthik. Join us in decoding how AI is reshaping India.
In our last episode with Dr. Khushwinder, we explored how AI is changing the laboratory and the research studies. Today, we shift from the hard science to the world of economics and human behavior. We are diving into how AI is redefining the way we study markets, decision making, and the interwoven world of liberal arts. And the guest for the day is Dr. Vidya Bharathi Rajkumar, who's an assistant professor of economics at Krea University. She has a PhD from Cornell and she specializes in understanding the complex choices humans make and how technology is beginning to influence that process. Vidya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Saran, and thank you, Karthik, for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Pleasure to have you with us. Vidya, you're a PhD from Cornell and now you teach at Krea, which is known for its unique arts studies. Can you tell us a bit about your role here and what your typical day looks like?
Sure. Thank you, Saran. So I am with the economics program at Krea, and I teach undergraduate students here. So a typical day at work for me would involve teaching a lecture for my students and then meeting with them, talking about coursework. So a lot of my day revolves around teaching and course planning. I also currently head the young econ department at Krea, so that's a fair amount of admin work to take care of as well. And then there's also research that is part of my workday. So there's work that I do on my own, and there is also work that I do with collaborators at Krea. So a typical day would involve components of all these three at work for me.
Got it. Got it. Good to know. And if you could just throw some light on how are you using AI in each of these work tasks, and have you seen them changing over the years? Has your work become easier or difficult?
I think that's a nice question to get us started on this conversation. I would say that having access to AI tools has definitely made quite a few tasks easier, but it's also made a few other tasks challenging in the sense that we have to reinvent and figure out new ways of doing the same thing, given that AI is now, so widely. I would say with admin, it makes emails and other routine tasks a lot easier. I do use AI a lot to support my teaching in the classroom. So that's where I've personally seen a huge change in my pedagogy and in how I design assignments for my students and, also keep a check on how they are learning what I would like them to learn. And so that's where I've seen a huge change for me personally with my teaching. I would say I also see it showing up in my research a little bit, although not that much, because it certainly helps to have AI as a sounding board to think through certain ideas, to figure out if some methods will be feasible or not. So it's pretty much like talking to somebody else who has similar training in the research methods, but less risky way of figuring out if your ideas would work or not. That's how I see it in research at the moment.
Was there a specific moment when you felt that you looked at AI and you were like, oh, this changes everything? And if there was a moment, when was
Uh-huh.
it?
I think I would say that the moment may sound trivial, but I think it was quite a shift for me. And this was probably the time when ChatGPT was making its way into India. I would say maybe 2.5 years ago, or maybe slightly more than that. So I teach a course on development economics here at Krea, and I was just having a conversation in ChatGPT to figure out if I can redesign my course or edit some parts of it. And I just to see the kind of responses I would get, I prompted it to give me a list of helpful readings that would be accessible for undergrads. And ChatGPT came up with very elegant looking readings, complete with URLs and very legitimate sounding readings. And there was a fantastic paper that had seemingly been written by Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee. And the title looked great, and the journal's name it was one of the most prestigious journals in econ. And I remembered now that I thought for a second that, wait, I haven't heard about this paper at all. If two legends have written this paper, then I should have done it in grad school or come across it somewhere. Maybe I missed this somehow. And I clicked on the link, and then the page doesn't exist. So and then I went through a few other links, and I figured out that ChatGPT had just created this whole list of very exquisite looking readings, with complete URLs and just the right economists names. And then I realized many of these were just bogus. And At the moment, I realized that I could catch this sooner because of the training and background that I had. But for the uninitiated, this would be, I wonder what kind of rabbit holes it would take them through. So that was maybe one moment where I realized this is going to be a solid game changer for how we think about education. Yeah, so that was my moment when I figured out, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to handle this.
Yeah, that's scary as well. That it's giving you information that doesn't exist. We already know that hallucination is a big problem, but imagine seeing the names
True.
of likes of Amritya Sen and then putting
Oh
it in your
yeah,
assignments because well
correct,
you are a
correct.
student and you don't know better, and then so
Correct.
is it so how do you think that
Mhm,
changed your perspective on how you want to use it in your teaching, and what
mhm,
steps are you taking to see that your students use
mhm.
it right and don't get down a path where it impacts
Mhm.
their learning?
So I think over the years, I've tried a few different things, and every year, as the AI tools also become more sophisticated, I also aspire to keep refining my pedagogical tools. So when I first started, I think one approach that I took at the time was to allow students to freely use AI to see if they were picking up what I was also picking up. And I gave them free rein and said, go ahead and do this, but you need to submit your prompts that you used for the assignment, and you need to critically engage with the prompts that you gave. So I think if I remember correctly, I did give them an assignment where a part of the assignment was them unpacking their prompts and ChatGPT's response to their prompts. And reviewing what they had submitted, I then realized that many of them were gradually picking up that some things were right, some things weren't right in terms of the AI responses that they were getting. So that was how I started figuring out how to, shape how we were working with AI. And gradually, what I have started doing with my classes is I use a range of tools to accommodate AI into my courses. So, but I think the common denominator across all of this is that while AI has made many things very easy and very quick to do, and it's available at your fingertips, what I really worry about is the loss in the human thinking component there, in how our critical thinking is so paramount to working through a problem, and that's a skill that AI can very easily, what's the right word? I don't want that skill to get dulled at any point.
Correct.
So that's something I try to stay cognizant of when designing my courses. And I've figured that the best way to do this is to just completely remove any online assignments from the course. So for some courses, this works out. So for instance, if I teach math, then the old school classic pen and paper exam is the way to go. And we've taken away all take home assignments, and it's all in class exams. And I'm sure my students might probably hate me for this, but I think that has tremendously solved AI use in some courses, while there are a few others where it's impossible to do pen and paper exams, or it just doesn't lend itself to that design very well. So in some courses, I've shifted to an in-class vocal discussion that we have. So the students could use AI to summarize readings or to try and understand concepts that they need more support on. But then what we do is we come to the class and we all have a discussion around the topics that we are learning, and so that forces them to at least think and assimilate and somehow internalize the learnings that they have from the course, either by doing them directly or by some using AI tools to help them through. So in class discussions, written assignments are some of the main ways that I've used so far to handle this.
I mean,
Amazing.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's quite interesting how you have adjusted, and the kind of things that you're trying.
Yeah, but I also think that this is whether you're able to do this because at your university you have the freedom to set the curriculum
Right.
and how you do it, whereas the public universities and other
Mhm.
universities might not have that
That's
luxury,
true.
and they will have to stick to the guidelines that are provided by, for example, UGC
Absolutely.
or the other authorities. So,
Mhm.
they're still struggling to figure out, but I am pretty sure that what you've said right now will be probably a great learning for a lot of people on how can they think about
Mhm.
assimilating AI in their teaching methodology as well.
Right. Now, I must say it's a continuous learning exercise for
Yeah.
all of regardless of where we are. But I think it's very important to acknowledge that I do have the freedom and autonomy
Mhm.
to design my courses, and I'm very grateful for that, and for the freedom to figure out ways to address new things that keep coming up.
But on a related note, is
Yeah.
Kriya giving you any guidelines, or how are they involved in all of this? Or are you learning from other peers in your university?
I think, yeah, peers, we do keep chatting and conversing, and we keep sharing what we try out with our courses, what works, what doesn't work. So yeah, so I think many of us do use tools like these, and I know several of my colleagues have switched completely to pen and paper exams for their courses, or it would be vivas for presentations. Some mode where the student has to somehow engage with the material without, you know, using a
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah, and recently I was reading that Denmark, for example, is going back to pen and paper and have decided to
Mhm.
not use technology anymore because it was impacting the learning of the students. And this is even before AI, and with AI, the things are becoming more difficult. So I think, yeah,
Right.
we're going back to the traditional old route of either the practical pen and paper or the practical examination or the vivas.
Right.
Right. Because at least you can test what students have learned without their ability of
True.
getting through the system using a Gen AI response.
True. True. Absolutely.
So, deep diving into the students, was there like a journey that you underwent in
Mhm.
trying to you said that you'd already asked students and given students permission for some of the subjects while not
Mhm.
others. So was
Right.
the did you undertake this as a journey? Did students not tell you about usage before? Was it an open secret before it was allowed as such?
I think, you could figure out that the students were well testing out all of these tools. So it was more an open secret, I'd say. Yeah, I think I've been aware of my students using AI from the time ChatGPT made its entry into India. So, and I would say that many of them are incredibly savvy in using these tools, and they do share with me some new tools they're trying out. And I also regularly use AI to do many things at work, as I mentioned, shared with you earlier. So I try to stay updated as much as I can on what's new and developing. And some of my students also come and tell me other interesting new things that they've uncovered. So that helps me stay updated and also know what they are up to. So yeah, so they're quite savvy.
That's great to hear. I think you guys have cracked the code. Vidya, I also wanted to ask you about the teachers and the role of teacher itself. And while you discussed about using newer ways, how comfortable are teachers with the pace of this technology? You can talk about Krea, but if you have experience with other teachers in other non-private universities, and if you think that they think this as a threat or more of a friend or enabler, is there a perspective on that?
Think at least certainly within Korea, maybe this is probably what's happening elsewhere as well. Some of my colleagues, they do embrace the changes
Mm.
that are coming. I mean, they're much more open to these changes, and they do adapt more quickly to accommodate these changes. While some of us are taking our time to figure out how to evolve and redesign our courses. But it's also, you know when AI has the potential to completely change how you've been teaching a course for a very long time, it does take some time to reinvent and reorient the course to a new way of instruction. So, and I think we all have different paces at which we'll go about doing that exercise. So, even within Kriya, my colleagues and I, we all fall into different buckets at different points in time. But in general, I think there is a growing acceptance that AI has come to stay, and we rather prep ourselves to handle it. With respect to colleagues at non private institutions, I'm not aware of very specific cases per se, but I would, if I were to maybe take a guess on how things are heading there, I think there may be a bit more uh, inertia, or it may take a little slightly longer to reorient instruction based on how AI is shaping up. But I think in general, many of us are moving towards the acceptance that the education scene is changing.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. I think teachers so far, whenever we've talked, we realize that teachers do fall into two different buckets. But the younger lot, especially, is really embracing the change, are very savvy, while teachers who are more senior are still trying to figure out. There was a fear of losing jobs.
Hmm.
They have now figured out that no, this is here to stay and this can be a technology that can be really useful. So they're trying to embrace it, but the pace of change is probably different across, the teachers' seniority level, and their ability to adapt
Right.
also is a little different when and I'm talking about purely on age basis, but it could be other factors as well, based, the experience being one of them.
Absolutely, because I think it takes a lot of time to re-engineer your courses
Yeah.
to suit the changing conditions, and it is quite a lot of effort from the instructor's sides to that goes into this whole process. So naturally there will be different, some folks might be very keen and enthusiastic about taking on this, and redesigning their courses, while there may be some others, a few of us who might want to take it much more slowly, or there may still be inertia that people are figuring out. So yes, I completely agree, we're all at different paces at this, but I think in general moving towards acceptance.
See. Yeah, you're also a policy student at Takshashila,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So when you look at, how AI is evolving, and at least the greater mass of educational institutions, be
Mhm.
it primary, pre-primary to K2 schools to public universities, have still not been able to bring some guidelines or incorporating AI in their curriculum, and students are using it, and there's a gap between how students are using it
Mhm.
versus how it should be used. When we talk to Dr. Kushwinder, who's a research professor, she said that it's an open secret that students use it, and sometimes they are not able to
Right.
differentiate between hallucination because they're not trained to do that. So from a policy
Right.
perspective, what do you think should be
Mhm.
some of the things that can be done in this space?
Great question, Saran, and I must confess that it's going to be an incredibly tricky one. But I think one way I would think about this is that, again, my response is going to come from the perspective of strengthening critical reasoning and independent thinking skills among the next generation of students. So because there's a and my answer is motivated by a quote that I came across somewhere, that building something with AI is like building a house with a deck of cards. It looks perfect, but it can be taken down in an instant. So I think it's the key here is to equip ourselves to use AI, as well as we can, and not allow AI to do the thinking for us, but rather use it as a very efficient assistant that we have. So I think given the rise and huge surge in AI that we see today, particularly in education, it's very important to focus on building critical thinking skills that go along with using AI. This is probably something that we need to put quite a bit of thought into. And as a policy, it might seem a little counterintuitive, but one thought I have is, if you want people to get actually better at using AI, you need to actively keep them away from AI for some time so that they can learn to live without AI and then come back to use it much more efficiently. And I think this is something that I am personally telling myself to do a lot more frequently as well, rather than just resorting to, Claude or Gemini to check an email for me. There are moments where I decide to not use AI support and just go the old school way of, doing it myself, or maybe working out something on pen and paper rather than typing it out and thinking aloud with an assistant. Several things. I think it's important to uh, keep doing things without AI so we remember that way of life and keep building our critical thinking to be able to efficiently use AI. As a policy, how this might translate and apply in educational institutions is something, uh, you know, I think substantial and very significant in scope. I think I would lean towards, solid critical thinking programs and training sessions to build capability to use AI effectively. That's the first thing that pops up to my mind right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we also think that, there is also, the AI is great, and taking it away from from students just because it's difficult. We don't have guidelines on how to guide them might not be the right way. At least that's what I think.
Mhm.
Because AI is also a great equalizer, if you want to say, right? It can
Absolutely.
help
Sure.
you, it can help
Mhm.
students who are probably not as
Correct.
good in certain subjects, get some personalized attention, personalized lesson plans, and all of that, which might not be possible if you were doing old school. So I agree with your point that we might have to find that very fine balance on how do we
True.
really use this. And
Absolutely.
this is a very difficult problem to solve, especially for educators who have seen both and do see a merit in using AI, but then also problems in using it.
Absolutely, Saran, and thank you for bringing that point up. I completely agree with you that it is indeed a great leveler, and particularly for students or for individuals for whom certain skills. I think it's a great tool to build confidence in many tools, including language and communication. And in that sense, I welcome the use of AI. And this probably, touches upon the point of whether AI is indeed accessible to folks at all, across the spectrum, or I'm sure there are economic challenges as well with the premium versions being priced quite, they may be priced at levels that may not be affordable for all of us. So I do acknowledge that limitation and caveat. But with that said, I agree with you. It is a great leveler. And I think going forward, it's important for all of us to be thinking about how we can critically use the tool rather than let the tool do the thinking for us. And maybe the
Correct.
tool can help us get there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hardest part that I think hasn't been figured out yet is how do you like enable critical thinking while also using
Mhm.
this. The risk is when people start using it, they hand over their thinking as well.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
right.
Yeah, and even if we say that to provide equity, we provide all the students a paid version so that they all have
Right,
equal access. What does that mean in terms of the critical thinking and the loss in that thinking that we want
right.
our next generation to have? So I think
Mhm.
it's a very fine balance. It's not only about providing everybody the same access,
Yeah.
but also figuring out, how do we help students who can really, take advantage of the personalized learning that AI can give them
Mhm.
versus not losing those critical thinkings. And I think that's a policy question that needs a lot of attention and thought. Or maybe we let another thought is that maybe we let educators figure it out at least for private universities. You guys have thought about some things and you've kind of figured out the best way and you're experimenting regularly. And with the growing pace, it might not be possible, for example, for public universities to keep on repeating guidelines, etc. So
Right.
maybe they also give free hand to the educators to decide their lectures and paper about their plans and how they test students. So maybe, we need to engage our educators more and let them train them more and then let them take students on this journey. That's just one thought.
I think quite a few of us are indeed experimenting, and I'm grateful for the privilege and autonomy that allows me to do that. And so I also follow other educators who actively post on LinkedIn and share their ideas. So many of the tools that I implement are all inspired, and I do take my lessons from other colleagues across the world who are trying out different techniques. I completely recognize, the place of privilege that allows me to do this. Grateful for that. And it's going to be an interesting few years to see how education shapes up and how folks across the band, liberal arts, traditional arts and science colleges, traditional colleges in general, how we all keep up with what's coming our way.
Yeah, and I think this will actually have to start from even before the graduate programs, right? We'll have to
Mhm.
think about this right at the school level.
Right.
Students from grade fourth onwards are now thinking about, or not rather thinking, they are using AI. They are
Hmm.
using AI for doing whatever assignments they get. So we need to kind of think about it from the early education itself.
One question, I mean, you've seen these models become better and better, right? So you
Right.
gave the
Yeah.
example of ChatGPT and it's
Right.
spotting out nonsense
Hmm.
2.5 years ago. Now, when
Right.
it'll give, I think it'll
Yeah.
mostly be accurate. There might be one or
Correct.
two things that are hard to
Correct.
find as well. So, as you're seeing these changes, what
Uh-huh.
are the things that you're worried about and also maybe excited about that will soon come up,
Um,
like in the next few years?
I think in terms of being excited, there are quite a few things to be excited about. One is that, of course, the hallucination has come down, as you said. And I think it's in general improved the pace at which we can get many things done. So I can see a huge change in that personally in the work that I personally do. There's been quite a big change with all of these AI models getting better. In terms of challenges, I think one is that it has now become and with some of the Gen AI tools also being very savvy in picking up our own writing style. uh, it's I wonder the AI seems to be doing thinking in a way that I would be thinking. Or I don't know if it goes the other way around. So the tools have gotten so sophisticated that they can mimic my writing style. And while that is great in some things, it's not so great because, I would want my individuality to be there. So it's just something to be cognizant of in how sophisticated these tools are getting. And other is that the pace of sophistication is at such incredible levels that I recently saw a LinkedIn post where somebody was able to write an entire econ research paper in 3 hours using AI.
Okay.
And it printed out an incredibly professional looking econ paper, a macro paper from start to end. And it had explored a question that was quite novel in the literature. It had picked up the right data sets. It had used just the right econometric methodologies. It had even constructed a theoretical model. And it had the bibliography, hyperlinked references, and, proper neat typeset LaTeX document. And for a second, you'd think that it's a proper econ job market candidate who's written that paper, but no, Claude wrote it. But then just to see that a research paper can be written in, less than 5 hours, what would take a grad student 5 years to write, maybe 3 years to write, AI can do it that very quickly. But then I also saw other economists reacting to that paper by saying a lot of the text, if you read it closely, is just very elegantly written junk. While the tool can seemingly create such professional looking papers, you still need the actual professionals to unpack the correct from the junk. But it does pose quite a challenge for academic research because then the question is what is novel? If a tool can write a paper for you that quickly, then how is research then, at least from the economic science, from the perspective of econ, if the Claude can write a paper for you, then what's the novelty in research that researchers are doing? What are they uncovering? So that's then going to become a start point of discussion very soon, and I can see that happening. So something to be excited about because AI can help me write very neat looking papers with lesser effort than earlier, but also scary because AI can write papers.
Yeah, indeed it is. But what I also wanted to bring to everyone's notice was that Taiwan actually has emerged as the first country to implement a comprehensive nationwide plan for AI in education. Yes. And they've published a full education policy and implementation plan, talking about how to integrate AI right from, school to higher education. So that's probably something that we can learn from. We'll also put it for our, listeners so that they can go through that and figure out. But I think we might not be able to pick exactly what they're doing because their circumstances, students, access, etc., everything is different. But there
Mhm.
still are learnings for us to learn from the other countries on how they are bringing
Oh,
and
I'm sure there is much to learn, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. One question: if you like we're talking about AI writing papers,
Right.
then let's say 5 years from now, what do you see would happen to your field, which is economics? Would it become more valuable, do you think, or less valuable?
It remains to be seen. I'd like to strongly believe that the field will continue to remain valuable because I think essentially when you're studying humans, there's always interesting things to learn about. So, and I'm sure the field will evolve to take on whatever new challenges comes its way. And 5 years down the line, I think I wonder how what kind of research questions will then be at the fore for the field, particularly for development econ. Maybe this will take many more to the fields. I mean, to the field to study problems, and maybe this might bring in more interaction and collaboration with other social sciences so that we could complement our expertise and learn from each other and study questions that were previously not viable for study. So I'm sure there will be opportunities that open up. And with how integrate, I mean, I think AI, in one sense, it has become a leveler, as we discussed, and in another way, I'm sure it'll make interdisciplinary learning much more attractive and enriching field to be exploring. So I yeah, maybe 5 years down the line, we might be starting to see some very novel research coming out of these fields. That's my hope, and fingers crossed for us to get there.
Yeah, at least I think, one big positive would be at least all the grungy tasks that you probably do now
Mm,
would definitely be taken over, right? So
that's
you
true.
will probably have a lot more time to do interesting things.
That's the thing, right? That yes, we might have more time on our hands or more problems that we'll need to spend time on.
Any last thoughts, Vidya? Anything that you would want to add? for our listeners? Any message that you have?
I think thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to both of you on this. And I think more than I would personally say this conversation has been a very enriching one for me, because just thinking out my thoughts aloud and sharing the work that I've been putting into my courses and my work in general, I think when you share it with someone, there's always something new in that for you to learn yourself. So thank you for giving me the chance to share this with you and learn in the process. You also shared your insights from your other guests, and that was a wonderful experience to hear about that as well. And I think no parting thoughts specifically. I think we're all learners in this big game that we are in. The only thing is, I think it's very important to stay updated on all the new changes that every new version or update is bringing with AI, and to see how sophisticated the models are getting. Because if we were to do anything to change the situation or impact it or influence it in any way, we need to know what we are dealing with. So I would say it's important to stay aware, updated on how things are changing, and also really important to think about what we are gaining and what we are losing, given the pace at which things are changing. And if we can somehow hold on to our ability to shape this tool and use it for collective welfare of everyone, that would be the direction I would personally like to go towards. So that's all I have to share.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely a pleasure to have you here with us.
Likewise, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Prompt India.
We will be back soon with another episode. Until then, take care.